Today we decided to come up with a Northwest meal, and all the ingredients are readily available up here. So the first course, we have an organic mixed green lettuce salad with pickled chanterelles. The second course is our Penn Cove mussels, which we steam with curry, lemongrass, and lime leaves, and a little coconut milk. And the main course is braised lamb shank with our local ale, lentils, and winter vegetables. To finish off our meal, we have a caramelized pear and hazelnut meringue cake. I think I'm getting hungry, and I think we should slowly get into the kitchen and put our aprons on and start cooking. The first course of this menu will be pickled chanterelles with an organic greens. Once in fall, we picked too many chanterelles and we didn't know what to do with the chanterelles, so we decided to pickle the chanterelles and store them in our cellar until we are ready to use them. So we'll put some water in a saucepan, white wine vinegar, and we infused our white wine vinegar with our fresh herbs from our farm. So we'll bring that up to a rolling boil. Take an onion and just cut it in wedges. They can be quite coarse. Then we have some Anaheim peppers. If you don't have any Anaheim peppers, you can definitely use red bell peppers or green peppers, or if you have poblano peppers, you can use poblano peppers. We cut them in half, leave them again also in large chunks, and we remove the seeds and take the stem off. Then we have some jalapeno peppers. I leave them whole, so I just remove the top of the pepper. Then we have rosemary. We take some little sprigs, leave them whole, and that is our flavoring. If you have sage or thyme, you can use those herbs. We take our chanterelle mushrooms. We do not wash them, just make sure they're nice and clean. If they're dirty on the bottom, you can scrape them with a little knife or a little tiny mushroom brush. If they're large mushrooms, we will just break them apart by hand, and they're very easy to do because they look nicer on the plate. If you don't have any chanterelle mushrooms, you can substitute domestic mushrooms, oyster mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms, any kind of mushroom you can find in the supermarket. This time our poaching liquid is boiling, so we place all the ingredients except chanterelles into the liquid to release the flavors. So we take the onions, Anaheim peppers, the jalapenos, rosemary, and garlic cloves. The recipe says 8 cloves, but you can put as many as you like. We have some bay leaf, 1 clove, some peppercorns, and I leave them whole, some salt, pinch of salt, and some sugar. After the poaching liquid has simmered for about 5 minutes, we add the clean chanterelle mushrooms to the liquid. Stir them gently. I believe our mushrooms are finished. They simmered for 2 minutes, so we'll get a pickling jar and transfer our pickled mushrooms into the pickling jar. The pickling we do here is not a true pickling process. We didn't sterilize all the pickling jar and mushrooms. So those pickles have to be refrigerated. They cannot be stored in the cellar. And the best way to enjoy those mushrooms, leave them in the refrigerator for 1 or 2 days so the mushroom can absorb the flavor of the vinegar and the spices. And the pickles can definitely be stored in the fridge for about 2 months, Close the pickling jar. And we serve those pickled chanterelles as an antipasto or with cured meats, or I do enjoy to serve them with some organic greens, and I might go in the garden right now and pick some of our organic greens. We are at our Spring Hill farm, you know, this is our getaway from the stress of the city. That's where we relax on the weekend and work in the garden, and it's up in Whatcom County, close to the Canadian border. We grow lots of herbs, mostly herbs in our garden. I have garlic, fennel, chives, marjoram, lots of thyme. Of course, I planted a few wild strawberries because I try to keep my kids interested in the garden too, so you have to tease them with certain things to get into the garden. We do also have zucchini, and we have enough room here to put several plants in here, and definitely take those to the restaurant, because otherwise my wife and kids wouldn't be happy anymore. They would have to eat too many zucchinis. And I just went out in the garden and I picked a few items for our dinner tonight. We got some chocolate mint. We have some beautiful sage, wonderful sage. I have 4 to 5 different kinds of sage, but they all do very well up here. We got marjoram, spice fennel. It's flowering already, so sometimes I use those flowers and use it as garnish, or then add it into cream sauces for fish. We use the fresh herbs because they're much more flavorful, and the color is nice and green, and herbs are easy to grow. It adds a lot of flavor to the dishes we cook, and you can change the flavor very much so by adding dill instead of basil, or by adding garlic instead of marjoram. So it's a matter of experimenting and trying different things, and I think it's wonderful if you can grow your own herbs or produce and use it in your cooking. For our second course on our Northwest meal, we'll prepare some Penn Cove mussels, which are steamed with lemongrass, curry, white wine, and that's one of our Northwest favorites. The Penn Cove mussel, they're on an island out in the Puget Sound on Whidbey Island in Coopville. It's about an hour's drive from Seattle, and deliver the fresh mussels twice a week, to our local restaurants, and that's one way we can assure our customers that they're nice and fresh. They're wonderful mussels. I think they're the best mussels in America. It's very important to make sure the mussels are fresh and firmly closed, and that's very important, because if mussels are open, then they're already half dead, and it's very important that you go one by one through the mussels. And sometimes they open like this mussel, and if you tap them, it will close. So that's one sign that the mussel is alive and fresh. As you can see here, those mussels, they attach themselves to ropes or rocks or pillars in the water. We call this a beard, so it's very important, to remove the beard, and the best way to remove it is grabbing it with a towel and gently remove it. Now we probably have about 40 mussels cleaned, and we'll take them and put them in a colander and start chopping all the other ingredients for our broth. The first thing, we're gonna take a shallot. If you don't have a shallot, you can use a red onion, or if you have a Walla Walla onion, and chop them in small pieces. For a steaming pot, and then we'll take some garlic cloves. And the easiest way to chop the garlic clove is just with the side of the knife, just quickly crush them. And then lemongrass adds a little Asian touch to our steamed mussels. The key is to make sure that they're not too dry, so you can check if it's still nice and green and moist. Lemongrass is only a flavoring agent. It's not there to be eaten. It's too tough. So what I do, I'll cut it in big pieces. With the back of the knife, I'll just bruise them to release the flavors. If you don't have any lemongrass available, you can substitute it maybe with lemon balm. I got some here from my garden. Lemon balm has a nice lemon flavor. or lemon verbena is also a good substitute. And if those are not available, you can take some lemon peel or lime peel. I will just add a few extra lemon balm leaves and chop those quickly just to add it. Then I have some curry powder. We make our own curry powder, but you just use your own curry powder you have in your cupboard. And take some dry white wine, if it's a fresh bottle or if it's some leftover wine from the night before, that is great. But the key is to have dry white wine, which is a Pinot Gris, a Sauvignon Blanc, a dry Chardonnay. Bring the broth up to a simmer. Then we have some heavy cream. I'll add that lemon balm from our garden. I'll add all the nice clean mussels and add them all at once. After we put the mussels in, we'll cover the pot and steam the mussels for roughly 4 minutes until they're all open. While the mussels are cooking, I'm gonna chop the green onions or chives finely and have that ready, and we add that last minute because we don't want that green onion discolored. It's probably roughly 4 minutes now. As you can see, they're all open, so we'll bring the mussels over here. With a slotted spoon, we transfer them into the bowl. So we'll add chives or green onions. Mix that up and then pour the sauce over the mussels. Those are our steamed Penn Cove mussels with lemongrass and curry, and I hope you do enjoy them, and they can be eaten as an appetizer or as a main course with a nice mixed green and rustic bread. This will be our main course today. We have Ellensburg lamb shank braised in ale. And this is probably our most popular winter item on the menu. We use hind shanks. The hind shanks are a little bit meatier than the front shanks. We have a pan, a roasting pan. We take some salt, season them on all sides. As you see, I don't put any oil in the frying pan. Lamb usually is a little on the fatty side, so there is plenty of natural grease on those lamb shanks. Our oven is preheated at 450 degrees, so we place our lamb shanks in the oven and roast them for roughly 1 hour. With the lamb shanks are in the oven, we can chop up our vegetables. We have parsnip, carrots, leek. If you don't have any parsnip in your part of the world, you can substitute the parsnip with celery or turnips. We peel those parsnips and carrots, dice them up in small pieces. It all depends how long you cook them after. You can use those vegetables, and that will be your vegetable side dish, so you don't have to make a separate side dish of vegetables. After about 20 minutes, we'll turn those lamb shanks around. We turn them around to make sure that they're evenly brown, and we'll do this process one more time because the browning gives it a good braising liquid. The leeks, we usually use only the bottom part of the leeks, but 1/3 of the leek on the top is already cut off because the green part is too bitter to use in the vegetables. Use only the pale green or whitish colored leek. With the leek, it's very important that you wash them very well because they're quite sandy. So even if you wash the leek prior to cutting, nobody likes to eat a leek with that gritty sand in it. We use a yellow onion, chop it up. The garlic, we're gonna use, if they're big garlic cloves, I usually just cut them in half. If they're small ones, just leave them whole. I like to see them in my finished product, Now we have all our vegetables ready, cut up to be added to our braised lamb shanks. There's roughly an hour that lamb shanks are in the oven. So they should be nice and brown. The easiest way to remove the fat is to move the lamb shanks out of the pan and store them on a serving platter, discard the fat, and place the lamb shanks back into the pan. We add whole garlic cloves, chopped onions, and we use some fresh rosemary. If you don't have rosemary, you can use thyme or sage or any other fragrant herbs. We just strip the needles off a little bit. Then we take ale, a Northwest ale, try to promote microbrews from the Pacific Northwest, and some chicken stock. 1.5 cups of homemade chicken stock. And if you don't have any homemade chicken stock, you can use some low sodium chicken broth. This is all the stuff we put in at this moment. Now we either cover the pan with a lid or with some tin foil and put the pan back into the oven and braise it for another 30 minutes. The lamb shanks have been braising for about 30 minutes, so at this time we add the lentils and the remaining vegetables. We didn't want to put those in before, otherwise they would be overcooked. So we have the carrots, the parsnip, and the leeks. And of course our lentils, and those little lentils are called Lepuy lentils, grown in Washington State. Washington State is the biggest lentil producer in America. So we just make sure that they're in the liquid. And as you can see, there is lots of vegetables, and they will enhance the flavor of the braising liquid. We cover the pan with a lid, or like I do with a piece of tin foil, and we put them back in the oven for about 45 minutes to make sure the lentils are cooked and the vegetables are nice and tender. It has been about 30 to 40 minutes, so I believe our lamb shanks should be tender by now. We'll take them out of the oven, remove the lid or the tin foil, and you can check with a fork. If it loosens off the bone slightly, the meat will be nice and tender. At this time we add the chopped parsley, the baby spinach leaves, and just fold them under the sauce. And in about 30 seconds, the spinach leaf probably are all wilted and they have a nice green color. And we are just about ready to plate our lamb shanks. If you see any excess fat, with a ladle, just remove the excess fat. There shouldn't be too much because we poured it off already before, but if there is some on top, just remove it with a spoon. In our restaurant, we serve our lamb shanks with garlic mashed potatoes. You can serve them with polenta, with mushroom risotto, any of your favorite starch. So we place a dollop of mashed potato on one side of the plate and gently take the lamb shank out, place it on the plate, ladle some of that nice vegetable braising liquid on top. Make sure that everybody gets about the same amount. We take some fresh herbs. I got some chives from my garden, and we cut them in 1-inch long pieces and sprinkle them on top. This is our main course for our dinner. Braised lamb shank with ale, lentils, vegetables, and garlic mashed potato. To finish off our meal, we are going to prepare a caramelized pear and a hazelnut meringue cake. We start first with some butter, which should be at room temperature. It will cream better if the butter is at room temperature. Then we add some sugar and cream it for roughly 2-3 minutes. At this time we separate our eggs, and they are large eggs, and we try to make sure they're nice and clean, that we separate them nicely, because it's important to have a clean meringue. With the egg yolks, we'll mix some vanilla, and we have pure vanilla extract, a little milk, mix it all nice and up. At this time we check with our butter and sugar mix, and we have to sometimes push the butter and sugar down so it incorporates well. We have all-purpose flour here, baking powder. So we mix those two ingredients together and sift them through a strainer. That is to make it nice and fluffy, and if there is, it incorporates well with the baking powder and flour. So at this time the sugar and butter mix is nice and fluffy. We'll stop the machine, push it down again, and or add the flour to our mix. Once that is incorporated, we add the egg yolk, milk, and vanilla at a slow stream just to incorporate it. And this is our base for the cake. In another mixing bowl, which is very important that it's nice and clean, we add the egg whites, which we reserved before, and then add the whisk attachment. And at medium speed, we fluff up the egg white until it's at a soft peak. We take our cake pans, and they're two little shallow cake pans. We can either spray it with a vegetable spray release, brush them with oil, or I use usually some parchment paper, and I make a circle and cut it out and lay it into the pan. And we have to do, for this recipe, we have to use two pans. One is the bottom and one is the top. I take the food spray release and just spray a little extra on there and make sure the sides are nicely greased so it doesn't stick to it. And then we transfer our cake mix on those two trays. Try to do it equally on both sides, and then we spread it with a small spatula or a spoon. Try to spread it evenly on the bottom of the pan. It doesn't have to touch the sides. Once it bakes, it will flow to the sides. So as long as it's close to the edge of the pan. I think our meringue is at a soft peak. So at this stage, we add our sugar at a slow stream with the machine running. We add it to the meringue and increase the speed a little bit, you know. This should be enough. Nice soft peak. We transfer the meringue again on both pans. The nice thing about this recipe is, you know, you can bake the meringue and the cake part all at once. So you don't have to do it in two stages. Now we spread the meringue around, and we are just about ready to put them in the oven. And the oven is preheated at 350 degrees, and the baking time of this cake is about 20 to 25 minutes. While the cakes are baking, we're gonna prepare our filling. For our filling, we are gonna use some Bartlett pears, and we make sure that they're nice and ripe. You know, it's very important for the flavor of this cake that the pears are ripe. We peel the pears, and you can use a peeler, or I use a paring knife. For this recipe, we use 3 pears, peel them, we quarter them, take the core out, and then cut them in thin slices. If you don't have any pears, you know, you can definitely substitute it with apples too, but transfer the pears on a plate, go behind the stove, and I'm gonna show you how to caramelize the pears. To caramelize the pears, we take a large frying pan, place it on top of the stove, and sprinkle some sugar in it. That will take a few minutes. We make sure we stand by because we have to make sure the sugar gets to the color of roughly peanut butter. As you can see, it starts to melt already, and it probably goes quite quickly afterwards. You can see here it starts to get brown and starts to change in color. And at this time we add the pears. And the moment we put the pears in, the sugar will start to crystallize. So you don't have to worry. Once we cook it for a few more minutes, it will dilute again. You see the nice, beautiful caramel color and the smell of the pears. So we cook this for roughly 1 or 2 minutes, depending on how ripe the pears are, and just make sure the caramel will dissolve in those 2-3 minutes. At this stage, the caramel is all dissolved, so we add our hazelnuts, and the hazelnuts are roasted and peeled, so we add those to our mix and just make sure that they're mixed well with the pears. Transfer them on a plate or in a bowl and place them either in the refrigerator or leave them outside to chill to room temperature. The cake should be ready now. We'll take them out of the oven and place them on a cooling rack. Now the cake should be nice and cold, probably chilled down for a half an hour, 3/4 hour. We have whipped cream which we whipped prior to this with a little bit icing sugar. Our caramelized pears and hazelnuts, we add them to the whipped cream and fold it gently in. Try not to over mix it too much. Now we take our cakes and we loosen the edges lightly with our finger. If you don't have the same pie pans, you have to loosen with a knife. Then we flip it upside down on our serving platter. We remove the bottom and make sure we remove the parchment paper too, if you use any parchment paper. We take our cream and the caramelized pear mix and place it on top of the cake. Use about half of our mix. And then we take the second cake and repeat the same thing we did before. Flip it upside down, remove the bottom parchment paper, and then gently top the cake. We sprinkle a little icing sugar on here, and then with a serrated knife, we cut the cake into 8 pieces. The cake will be very fragile, so use a serrated knife and move the knife quite quickly. This is cut into 8. Then we take a serving plate, we transfer it onto the plate, and I like to use a little knife and a fork, and we use that as a stencil for our icing sugar. Then we just sprinkle icing sugar all over the plate, remove the knife and fork, and then you have a nice beautiful stencil. With the remaining caramelized pear and cream mix, I just add a little bit on the side. And the final touch on this dessert will be a fresh sprig of mint, and that's the last course on our dinner. Whenever we have a great meal like this in Switzerland, we always say gute, enjoy your meal. I hope you had some fun today preparing this meal, and I hope I can join you in your kitchen again sometime soon. Happy cooking.